The sun, reason returned to me, told me this globe could not be that. What was it then? Ra Harmachis of the Egyptians, stripped of his wings, exiled, in growing ode in the corridors of the dead? Or that mocking luminary, the cold phantom of the god of light and warmth, which the old Norsemen believed was set in their frozen hell to torment the damned? I thrust aside the fantasies impatiently, but sun or no sun, light streamed from this orb, light in multicolored lanced rays, banishing the blackness through which we had been flying. Closer we came and closer, lighter it grew about us, and by the growing light I saw that still beside us ran the abyss, and even louder, more thunderous, became the clamor. At the foot of the radiant disk I glimpsed a luminous pool. Into it, out of the depths, protruded a tremendous rectangular tongue, gleaming like a gray steel. On the tongue an inky shape appeared. It lifted itself from the abyss, rushed upon the disk, and took form. Like a gigantic spider it was, squat and horned. For an instant it was silhouetted against the smiling sphere, poised itself, and vanished through it. Now, not far ahead, silhouetted as had been the spider shape, blackened into sight a cube, and on it Ruth and Norhala. It seemed to hover, to wait. "It's a door!" Drake's shout beat thinly in my ears against the hurricane of sound. What I thought had been an orb was indeed a gateway, a portal, and it was gigantic. The light streamed through it, the flaming colors, the lightning glare, the drifting shadows were all beyond it. The suggestion of sphere had been an illusion, born of the darkness in which we were moving and in its own luminescence. And I saw that the steel tongue was a ramp, a slide dropping down into the gulf. Norhala raised her hand high above her head. Up from the darkness flew an incredible shape like a monstrous, armored, flat-backed crab. Angled spikes protruded from it. Its huge body was spangled with darting greenish flames. It swept beneath us, and by. On its back were multitudinous breasts, from which issued blinding flashes, sapphire blue, emerald green, sun yellow. It hung poised as had that other nightmare shape, standing out jet black and colossal, rearing upon columnar legs, whose outlines were those of alternate enormous angled arrow points and lunettes. Swiftly its form shifted. An instant it hovered, half disintegrate. Now I saw spinning spheres and darting cubes and pyramids click into new positions. The front and side legs lengthened, the back legs shortened, fitting themselves plainly to what must be a varying angle of descent beyond. And it was no chimera, no kraken of the abyss. It was a car made of the metal things. I caught again the flashes and thought that they were jewels or heaps of shining ores carried by the conscious machine. It vanished. In its place hung poised the cube that bore the enigmatic women and Ruth. Then they were gone, and we stood there but an instant before they had been. We were high above in an ocean of living light, a sea of incandescent splendors that stretched mile upon uncounted mile, and whose incredible waves streamed thousands of feet in air, flew in gigantic banners, in tremendous streamers, in coruscating clouds of vari-colored flame, as though torn by the talons of a mighty wind. My dazzled sight cleared. Glare and blazing searing incandescence took form, became ordered. Within the sea of light I glimpsed shadows cyclopean, unnameable. They moved slowly with an awesome deliberateness. They shone darkly within the flame-woven depths. From them came the volleys of the lightnings. Score upon score of them there were, huge and enigmatic. Their flaming levins threatened the shimmering walls, patterned them, as though they were the flying robes of the very spirit of fire. And the tumult was as 10,000 Thors, smiting with hammers against the enemies of Odin. as a forge upon whose shouting anvils was being shaped a new world. A new world? A metal world. The thought spun through my mazed brain, was gone, and not until long after did I remember it. For suddenly all that clamor died, lightning ceased, all the flitting radiances paled, and the sea of flaming splendors grew thin as moving mists. The storming shapes dulled with them, seeming to darken into the murk. Through the fast waning light, and far, far away, miles it seemed, on high and many, many miles in length, a broad band of fluorescent amethysts shone. From it dropped curtains, shimmering, nebulous as the marching folds of the aurora. They poured cascaded from the amethystine band. Huge and purple-black against their opalescence, bulked at what at first I thought a mountain, so like was it to one of the fantastic buttes of our desert southwest, when their castellated tops are silhouetted against the setting of the sun. Knew instantly that this was but subconscious striving to translate into terms of reality the incredible. It was a city. A city full 5,000 feet high and crowned with countless spires and turrets, titanic arches, stupendous domes. It was as though the man-made cliffs of lower New York were raised scores of their time their height. And weirdly enough it did suggest those same towering masses of masonry when one sees them blacken against the twilight sky. The pit darkened, as though night were filtering down into it. The vast purple-shadowed walls of the city speckled out with countless lights. From the crowning arches and turrets leaped broad filaments of flame, flashing electric. Was it my straining eyes, the play of the light and shadow, or were those high-flung excrescences shifting, changing shape? An icy hand stretched out of the unknown stilled my heart, for they were shifting. Arches and domes, turrets and spires, were melting, reappearing in ferment, like the lightning-threaded, rolling edges of the thundercloud. I wrenched my gaze away, saw that our platform had come to rest upon a broad and silvery ledge close to the curving frame of the portal, and not a yard from where upon her block stood Norhala, her arm clasped about the rigid form of Ruth. I heard a sob from Ventnor, an exclamation from Drake. Before one of us could cry out to Ruth, the cube glided to the edge of the shelf, dipped out of sight. That upon which we rode trembled and sped after it. There came a sickening sense of falling. We lurched against each other. For the first time the pony whinnied fearfully. Then, with awful speed, we were flying down a wide, glistening, steeply angled ramp into the pit, straight towards the half-hidden, soaring escarpments flashing afar. Far ahead raced the thing on which stood woman and maid. Their hair streamed behind them, mingled, silken web of brown and shining veil of red gold. Little clouds of sparkling corpuscles threaded them like flitting swarms of fireflies. Their bodies were nimbused with tiny flickering tongues of lavender flame. About us, above us, began again to rumble the countless drums of the thunder. End of chapter 8. The Metal Monster by Abraham Merritt.